In 1981, while in college, I was in a play called The Sounding Brass. As I recall, it was about the life of the Apostle Paul. All right, so one night we're on stage performing in a very small arena theater. We're all wearing our tunics, and nothing scares an actor like the sound of dialogue flying back and forth, and then all of a sudden there's an extended pause. I looked every actor in the eye and I thought, who was it that dropped their line? Who did not pick up on their cue? Who is asleep at the switch? Why should I have to work with such incompetence? Then I remembered the meaning of the play about the Apostle Paul and forgiveness, how we need to forgive those who err. Especially me, because I'm the one that forgot the line. It happens! Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. Welcome to our guest. For some reason, I woke up the other day and thought about that story that happened 36 years ago. Why now would I remember that? It just reminded me of the fact that we will not do anything perfectly. We can't do anything perfectly. And some will disagree with me on that, and that's perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. That was an odd choice of words. Anyhow, however, expecting perfection from ourselves can be an obstacle to getting anything done. And I think perfectionism is a pernicious illusion that really can block us from our creativity. The way I remember this is I think about the acronym, the 3 Ps: perfection, procrastination, and paralysis. The first one, perfection. Nowhere does perfection rear its ugly head with me more than in my attempts to write fiction. Notice I said attempts. If I sit down at the computer and I think I have to write something really good, will this win the Pulitzer Prize? Will I win the Nobel Prize? What will people think? Right? That's the big one. What will people think? I'm not going to get anything written. I'm going to squelch my own creativity. The antidote is just to say, you know what? I'm going to just throw some crap on the page, and today it's going to be good enough. Now, I want to repeat some quotes that I have said in previous speeches because I think they're worth repeating. I had a writing teacher that said, you have to learn how to write badly before you can ever learn how to write well. And the famous one I've said many times, excuse me, everything can be fixed except for a blank page. If there's nothing on the page, there's nothing to fix. There's nothing to learn from. Perhaps the same is true of public speaking. Maybe we have to learn how to speak badly before we can learn how to speak well. Maybe the only speech that can't be fixed is the one that's never given. If we stay in a period of perfectionism too long, we can slide into the next P, which is procrastination. I think the more we procrastinate something, the less our desire becomes to do that thing. I think to myself, I'll write when I feel like it, I'll write when I'm motivated, I'll write when I'm inspired. I used to have a theater professor who would do it all the time. He would do this and he would say, rotten bananas. What I find when I sit down and write, even if I don't know what I'm going to write, that's when the inspiration comes. That's when the ideas come. But I have to sit down and write first. If we don't do that, we stay in procrastination too long, we slide into the next P, paralysis, which is pretty self-explanatory, which means that we're not doing anything. Maybe it's our golf game we're not playing, we're not crocheting, we're not giving a speech, whatever it might be. Perfection, procrastination, and paralysis can definitely be obstacles to getting in our way of accomplishing what we really want to accomplish. When I was in junior high school in the 70s, the 1870s, the Civil War had ended, my body still worked well, Actually, I wanted to be an alto saxophone player. Now, how weird is that? I used to listen to David Bowie all the time. Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
And I had my headphones on. Suffragette City! I must have heard that song a million times. But in that piece, there was an alto saxophonist. I think his name was David Sanborn. It was amazing. He would just rip notes out of... It's just unbelievable. I wanted to be like David Sanborn. So I started taking saxophone lessons that my mother would drag me to and drag me from. One day, I'm in his kitchen. That's where the lesson was. And I had the hardest time with the low notes, because alto sax is pretty high pitched, right? So my low notes would come out something like this. Boo, boo. And I sounded like, I don't know, a sick cow or something. His roommate walked in the kitchen, looked out the window and said, "Oh, the fog's rolling in." But it didn't matter because it wasn't Carnegie Hall. Nobody cared. Well, I cared. But it wasn't Carnegie Hall. I was learning. So I had to make mistakes and I had to allow myself to sound badly, which I did a very good job of. I leave you with a quote from Darren. Oh, I want to say this first. I think in a Toastmasters club, it's better to get up and give a speech that we think may not be so great, that we think might be half-baked, than it is to not speak at all. Because if we don't speak at all, then we're not learning anything. Now I leave you with a quote from Darren LaCroix. Do any of you know who he is? Some of you do. 2001 world champion public speaker for Toastmasters. The club is the place to fall on your face. Madam Toastmaster.